This profusion of lavender in front of a house was actually the foreground of a drawing that I did for the 10-minute real-time drawing video daily practice exercises. But I thought it would be a great subject for exploring drawing the effect of detail with a very detailed subject. Now, I've done a few videos on this subject, but using daisy-like flowers, which in some ways are more straightforward. This was clearly going to be much more challenging because the effect, the massed effect of the lavender is so much more detailed, even in the relatively close-up sections. These really thin stems that the flowers have, and then the way the flowers look, the way the masses of leaves look, everything is very small, and the shadows that are between, but also the way when we look, if you look at the reference for a minute with these rounded clumps, the way in some parts the stalks seem to all accumulate together visually, and in other parts the flower heads seem to accumulate all together visually. And these are the sorts of, if you like, visual effects of the flowers that we need to see in our reference so we can draw the effect. Now, usually in a scene such as this, I try and draw some actual flowers in some detail, particularly, well, completely very close to the front, because I'm trying to give a little more clarity to someone looking at this to see what's happening. I'm trying to drop some clues right in the front that are easy to see. But once we go beyond that, then I'm really having to capture the overall effect of different parts of these massed flowers. So I began to explore a bit in the lower left section and tried to do some larger ones because my thinking was, well, these are larger, and this is more not drawing the effect so much as drawing the flowers, and it will help me become more familiar with exactly how they look and the sorts of marks that might be effective in capturing these close-up ones. It's all about creating a variety of marks arranged in a variety of ways to create, if you like, groupings of things visually that in this case are all the same thing, but the same thing under different conditions, the same thing viewed from different distances, the same thing viewed from our viewing position. So some of these lavender heads we're looking down on more, some of them we're looking along more, and the same with the stalks, and that creates this almost banding effect. Now, not a regular banding, but that sort of thing. Now, you'll notice I did the fence first because it's going to be quite important for creating a resting place. This is the oasis of the scene. This is where partly we can get a sense of what this is. Oh, this is a garden. That must be a house behind, and there are some other flowers in the garden behind. It's a garden, it's not a field. But it also gives us a sense of scale, of what size we're looking at. It helps us to work out the scale of the furthest and the closest things. And look, one of the importance is that we don't just use different marks, but we use different sized marks, and we use different weighting of marks. That the marks in the front generally are larger and they're heavier. We press a little bit more on the pen as we draw them. And then whatever lines or curls or whatever we use longer ones, larger ones, than we do as the marks go further back, because this is going to help create the sense of scale. Now you'll see what I'm doing at this point. I'm defining the perimeter of another, if you like, area that I'm in my head. I've divided all this massive lavender into. I can't just start drawing it. I have to have a sense of sections, and then I deal with each section separately. And I don't necessarily finish a section before I start the next section, because I don't always exactly know exactly what kind of marks are going to work in the next section, and that will affect the previous section. So I'm bouncing back and forth between my sections, strengthening some things, making some things stronger so that they stand out more from another section that I've started to do and I've realised the marks are a bit similar, or I need to work out some more, if you like, border marks where I separate sections. And so it is a continual back and forth, but it's not random. I'm not just doing a bit of this and I'm sick of that, so I'm going to do a bit of something else. But I'm trying to do something over the whole scene as soon as I can, but use the latest marks I've made to make adjustments to the earliest marks I've made, which is why I keep coming back down to this bottom corner, which I do throughout the entire drawing. Because the first marks I made, I had least information, least thinking or knowledge about what I was going to do. Because this really is an exploration as I go. And can I say, having put even some of my thinking into words with this voiceover now, as I watch the video being replayed, I'm sure I could redraw this much better, because I can start now with all of the experience of the whole drawing. However, I'm certainly happy with this still to post it now. I hope you like lavender, because there's a lot of it here. Now, edges, silhouettes are really important, whether they're positive or negative, whether I'm drawing the actual shape or whether I'm coming in behind with the value of what's behind and highlighting the silhouette by drawing the darker shrubs hedging behind. Either way, the silhouette edges are really vital, so I need to pay particular attention to them. And I'm trying to spread across the whole page more. So I'm still experimenting with marks. I mean, the bits where there are stalks are kind of easy enough, and the shadows between the stalks, but it becomes a little more complex in terms of the marks for the lavender heads. I think I had a better sense of what I was doing towards the end, which is why I think I could do a probably better job if I did this again. But every drawing should make us feel that way. Every drawing should make us feel, I learned so much with this because I was thinking and pushing myself the whole way through that I could start with all of that knowledge and experience now. So now I'm doing the top of this post because I want to now do the garden behind so I can get the very furthest marks in place, because in some ways the very furthest marks are just as important as the closest ones. Not so much for defining what we're looking at, that will still come probably from closer marks, but for the sense of distance. And in a scene such as this, creating a sense of distance is really important for not letting it become just an overwhelming tangle of little marks and squirrels and lines and whatnot. And a sense of depth will help bring clarity visually to what we're looking at. It will help us make sense of what we're seeing, because we'll know, okay, if that's far away back there, then this is much closer here. And there's the fence in the middle. And so I'm using every clue I can as I try to find marks to create the effects. And as is quite clear, there is no single answer. It's not, this is how you draw lavenders when they're massed in profuse flowering like this. It's, in this corner, at this distance, looking at them side on, these marks were the ones I chose. But for the far distance, in the opposite diagonal corner, I barely drew them at all. It was just a few dots and a silhouette edge. And in the middle, I've used small rounded marks that really just indicate the tops, much the way I might use marks to indicate some of the heads of a crowd, in the distance. It's all about what am I seeing? What's the overall visual effect in my reference, or in life if I'm drawing on location, and how can I capture that in my marks? I'm using the 0.1mm pen, and hey, if you're finding this interesting or helpful, please hit the like button for me right now before you forget. I'd really appreciate that. And I'd love to hear whether you think this works or not at the end. But even if you don't think the drawing works, what do you think of the technique? Is this something that you can use for other flowers, other profuse detail scenes? So I'm trying to get this veranda railing done, again, because it's something that is in stark contrast. These man-made straight lines are in stark contrast to the effect of the smaller marks and the way they're arranged, the patterns they're arranged in. So I'm trying to see patterns in the visual appearance of what I see, but I don't want to start drawing a repeated pattern. That's the other really important thing to do with this. We must allow for foreshortening, which affects the way things look as they move further back. And we have to keep remembering that in a photo, the impact of distance is reduced. The visual impact of distance is reduced, particularly the lessening of detail that we see, because the camera captures it all and puts it all. And if we replicate that closely in our drawing, then we're going to just have a massive detail that looks flat, because we won't be able to see the depth that we would have seen in real life. And that the photo gives us some clues that we can use to perhaps see more than the photo showing us. But when we draw, we have to firstly in our imagination see the depth and then recreate the visual effect in the atmosphere and so forth of that distance. So I'm now getting this house done, and I want to, I think, lock in the garden behind. I want to get the sense of the flowers. Now, it doesn't really matter identifying the flowers or the types of bushes this far back, but we want to have a sense of there's a garden on the other side of this lavender, because that all helps us to understand that this lavender is forwards of something. If something is behind, then the lavender is forwards. And so again, it's establishing resting points where it's easy, if you like, to work out the depth. I'm just seeing a few things that I've missed because I have the finished drawing in front of me just to help me see exactly what I'm doing. And you're watching this at double time. This took me probably about 40 minutes to draw in real life. And there's about 7 minutes missing that will suddenly pop onto the screen all at once. I had to interrupt my drawing for just a few moments, really. And of course, I didn't put the camera back on. Fortunately, I had to stop it again shortly afterwards and realise that that was the case. So it's certainly been much worse than 7 minutes. So what I'm also having to do now is to try and stand back and look at the big picture. Now, I can't take any marks off. So if I feel there's not as much clarity as I'd like, the only way I can resolve that is by adding marks to certain parts to help define sections better. But I'm also wanting to really get this last lower right section blocked out a bit more, because we really want to be working across the effect of the whole scene, because that's the only way we can really be confident of how much finish a certain part needs, because it's the effect it creates in conjunction with every other part. So it's very similar to adding hatching to create value, where exactly how much value we need in one place depends on how much value we've placed in another place. And so we do have to keep manipulating back and forth across the whole scene as we do that. And we often see opportunities halfway through the process that we didn't see earlier. So I'm feeling that this is all looking a bit the same on the left-hand side. So I want to define some areas more and create some more darkness. And I think at any moment it will all suddenly appear. And while I do add more, it does I think, help give some sense of what we're looking at. So I'm working on some of these closest things now. And I've got more sense of the sort of marks that are available to me if I can only find room to put them now. So I'm trying to get this dark value here. I don't want to make it too dark because then it's going to compete with the closest dark areas on the lower left. So it needs to be dark and the lines close together, but not creating as much of a darkness as the closer parts are. So I'm clearly pausing, wondering what to do at that point. Trying to just define that post a little bit more by manipulating the values around it. Not worrying about the photo while I do that, just adjusting them for how I think they will work best in this. So I'm working on these apparent bands where we see a whole lot of the stems of the lavender. And now we have it. Our lavender front garden. What do you think? G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Capturing the effect of the detail, learning to see the detail and to capture the effect is such a versatile way of thinking and drawing. Hope you have a go with this. You'll find the photo on my channel community page. So why not? Not easy, but certainly worth a try, or just try part of it. But whatever you draw and however it turns out, make sure you have fun. That makes us always a winner. I'll see you next time. Bye.